Well, here we have a rarely seen car, at least anymore. This is a Chrysler LHS, Chrysler's second entry for the brand in the LH platform after the Concorde was released in the 1993 model year. And if you recall, these were both based on the LH platform, which some people dubbed Chrysler's last hope just because it was in so much financial difficulty perpetually, really since the 60s. But this car represented such a dramatic departure from the K cars that Chrysler was producing before it. And the underpinnings for the LH platform really came from the Eagle Premier, which was a Renault platform, hence why the engines are longitudinally mounted in these vehicles. This LHS came out in 1994, lasted to 1997, allegedly had some Bugatti cues like that C-pillar that you see there. And the LHS was the top-of-the-line model for Chrysler. And there was the Concorde in these years that was priced just below $20,000. The New Yorker that was priced around $25,000. The LHS was the top dog of the LH platform Chryslers in this era, priced at around $30,000, which was pretty expensive. But of all the vehicles, the LHS sold very well with 50,000 units, better than the one-down New Yorker, which sold 34,000 units. Not quite as good as the Concorde, which sold 85,000 units in 1994, the LHS and New Yorker's introductory year. These cars came standard with a 3.5-liter V6 that made 214 horsepower, pretty good for the period. And I think they did about 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds, which for the time was quite good. And frankly, the styling on these was so revolutionary for the era that it really put Chrysler in the driver's seat in the 90s until, unfortunately, the Daimler-Chrysler so-called merger, when subsequently after that the Germans took a bunch of cost out and really hurt Chrysler. But look at this interior. It's got, kind of a handsome instrument panel. Interesting faux wood grain choices, but tastefully applied. And then these beautiful gathered leather seats, kind of like an overstuffed leather pattern here. And the door panels have a similar theme, but very, very comfortable seating for the era. And these cars really had quite good interior room for the era. They rode atop a 113-inch wheelbase, just like the Concorde, and they were almost 17 feet long, so they were quite large. And they introduced the cab-forward styling, if you recall that term, which enabled vast interior space and kind of this sleek look with the steeply raked windshield. And this cab-forward design really put Chrysler back in the driver's seat when it came to design, perhaps very similar to like what Chrysler had done almost 40 years earlier with the forward look in 1957. These cars were the darling of the design world at the time. And cab forward was something that Chrysler employed not just on this generation of LH cars, but the subsequent one very successfully. And they gave their so-called cloud cars, the Cirrus and Stratus, and later the Breeze, similar looks to mimic these vehicles in later years when they were introduced. And for those who aren't familiar with the term, essentially what cab-forward design meant was lengthening the overall car's greenhouse or the glass area, pushing the wheels out to the corners, and it resulted in this kind of stubby trunk, a rather shortened nose because of the steeply ranked windshield, and an overall wide track stance. So it was a really great design theme for the time. And I think this car particularly has aged really well. I mean, it still looks really good. And these cars did have some interesting options. You could get them with a firmer touring suspension with performance tires. You could get, like this car, the leather interior. They even had a really innovative child safety seat that was integrated into the rear seat and just kind of flipped out. I thought that was a really neat invention. But long story short, this cab-forward styling that Chrysler had, they really rode into the late 90s, even the early 2000s. It started with the Chrysler Portofino concept in the late 80s, which you can imagine the Portofino in the context of what was being produced by Chrysler at the time. I mean, it looked like it was a spaceship compared to the K-car derivatives and the early 90s Imperials and the Chrysler Fifth Avenues and all of that. And it set the tone for Chrysler styling, and one of the few concept cars that, while it didn't go directly into production, the themes that it contained certainly did and went into production and were highly, highly successful. They were certainly the cars to be seen in the era. Let's close out with an ad from the early 90s of the Chrysler LHS.
It has a 214 horsepower 24-valve V6. It also has more interior room than a Lexus LS 400. Cab forward design gives it a wide track for aggressive handling. It also has dual airbags and computerized traction control. Introducing the Chrysler LHS. The American luxury car is now in the fast lane.
Thanks again for watching this video on the 1994 to 97 Chrysler LHS. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care.